Okay, I think we've had about 3 false starts at this so far. I think so far we're good. I'm Meg, of course. I'm writing a book, as you all know, called Watch Your Language. And I'm sitting here with my mum over the last couple of days. She's been up here and she mentioned that she would actually like to write a little bit about her experience coming from a mother's point of view when you have experienced your daughter or your child going through an eating disorder. And I thought that was a really great idea because when I spend time at a Alicia Wellness Retreat and I talk on the brain and changing our thoughts and our patterns and our actions and our behaviors, the very basics of neuroplasticity, and then share the concept of how I spent over 28 years in eating disorders and then anxiety, mental illness and self-sabotage, comparison, judgment, and generally the feelings of not enough. I get so many mothers that ask the question to me, what do I do? My 9-year-old or my 10-year-old is refusing to eat or is calling herself fat in the mirror. What do I do? I'm trying to feed her all this information and stuff and trying to help her. What can I do to fix her? And I don't know the right answers. I don't think any of us do. But from my perspective, and a big place that I share in the book is that I think from a mother's point of view, all we can do is look after ourselves and actually give that energy back into ourselves so that your daughter or your son or someone you're caring for that's going through an eating disorder or something similar, or body dysmorphia, which is becoming really big, including muscle dysmorphia, can actually learn from you and see that you're putting the energy and love and compassion back into yourself and that you're stepping up and making sure that you're looking after you so that you can be the best teacher you can be for them. So when Mum decided to write this little, intro from a mother's perspective for my book, Watch Your Language, I didn't hesitate because I know how long my mum actually went through her own suffering for many, many years, and I don't think any mother should have to do that. It's a choice that I made to be in my eating disorder. I was the one who made that decision to not eat food. And I believe that every single one of us has a choice, including from a mother's perspective. And I wanted to just share a few of the things that we just discussed today and last night. So what would be your intention, I guess, for those who'll be reading the book from a mother's point of view? How would you like to deliver your message? What would you like them to get out of this from a mother's point of view?
I guess to begin with, it's really this overwhelming guilt that you were the cause.
As in you, the mother?
Yes, the mother, yes. And not knowing at the time what to do, but now there is a way out, and that is if you can honestly see that really what has happened is not your fault. That's the big thing. Instead of living with something for 20 odd years thinking that it was your fault that this all happened in the first place.
And she's so true. I'm quite emotional actually, because she did hold on to it for 20 years, and I also held on to some of that guilt myself, going, I've put my parents through this. And it was something I had to let go of as well. Both of us, in that sense, hold on to this guilt. It's almost mirrored of my mum thinking, my God, what could I have done differently? Or if I'd done this, maybe to be different. And then myself dealing with the eating disorder going, oh God, like I've put my parents through all this pain. And to be honest, none of it helps, does it?
No, it doesn't help you at all, because it's just a guilt thing that you go through all these years. And you think about what would have happened if you'd have been able to make a difference. And you realise that now I realise, but at the time I didn't, that there wasn't really nothing that I could do.
Yeah, it's and that's a big thing. And I think it's so important to take those words on board. We've got to do our best to surrender the expectation or the outcome in everything. We can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right? We can do all the things under the sun to try and fix or to give this information out or to direct people on the right path, but especially with people with eating disorders. The anorexia or the bulimia is a completely different person to the actual person going through it. And I know my mum has experienced that to the biggest degree, and not just my mum, but my dad as well. And I guess what would you say to any parents listening that are faced with the eating disorder and the real person?
Look for all the help that is now out there that wasn't there when Megan first, or when I first
I love
became...
the fact she still calls me Megan.
Yeah, well, that's mother's prerogative. But look for help, because there's a lot out there, and there wasn't for me.
Definitely.
And that was my big thing. I had nobody to turn to, really.
The help is definitely out there, and give yourself permission. Especially if you're a female, it's really hard to yield and surrender and to ask for help. There's so much out there now, and I share 3 big ones in my book, Watch Your Language. One is Millie Thomas from Healed. She's amazing. 2, of course, Beyond Blue. Get help for the thoughts of depression or blame and shame and guilt. They're really, really good with helping with that, and they're accessible all the time. And the 3rd one, if your child is going through an eating disorder and physically quite ill, it's a very holistic practice, and it's End ED, run up in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Some really great resources that have amazing things online now, and Millie also has a podcast. But there's one other thing that I just want to touch on for this short video today. I know Mum mentioned that a lot of the thoughts that came in, like what were some of the thoughts that you used to have on yourself when you were going through this? How was your mind? How did you think about yourself?
I totally blamed myself, because I thought that I was doing the right thing and trying to bring you up, that you'd have a fairly a normal life, and so to me I felt that I'd failed really badly, and that I'd caused for you to end up in this situation, and I couldn't see a way around it.
Cool.
And like I said, like it was just this constant, what would have happened if I'd been able to have done differently.
So you feel like you were sort of stuck in the should have, could have, and would have.
Very much so.
She mentions here in the book too exactly that. I could have done things differently. I could have been more open. I tried to hide it and could have done things with more awareness, and I blamed myself. And I think from the research I've done and the women that I've spoken to and the men, this comes up constantly. And I just want to ask you a question. Did any of those feelings and emotions help you at all? The blaming and the guilt? Not one. So why do we do it? And I've done it myself, through an eating. So what is that? It's guilt and shame. That's 100% an eating disorder. You don't think you're enough. And we constantly spend so many time in these thoughts that do nothing for us. And what we practice grows stronger. And so for Mum herself, she spent 20 years in guilt. I spent 26 years or so, 27 in an eating disorder. And it's so important to just become aware, as what Mum said here, to do things with some more awareness. For when we have awareness with what we're thinking, I'm thinking I'm blaming myself. I'm thinking I'm a bad person. I'm thinking I should have done this. If we can acknowledge that we are thinking that, it's in that moment that we can actually take a breath and pause and choose again, and actually offer ourselves some compassion and some kindness, and to actually know that it's out of our control. Is the last thing I want to share here that Mum said was really powerful. She says, I chose to hold on to the guilt of her eating disorders for nearly 20 years. This guilt may or may not have presented in my body, and I'm slowly starting to get to know the connection of my thoughts and physiological response. If I was to leave a message or word of advice for any mothers, fathers or carers out there with kids with an eating disorder, I would have chosen at the start to realize that it's not my fault, to then be able to put that energy back into myself and let it be the ride that it was. It's not about not supporting, because you always will, you're a mother, but it's not taking the blame for the choices she made. Yeah. Have you got anything to say to that?
No, just don't let it eat you up. It's not your fault.
Mind the pun. We'll leave it at that, but I just hope that this leaves a message for the mothers and the fathers and the carers out there that are dealing with somebody with an eating disorder. And any kid out there or any adult that has been through an eating disorder and has been told the words, once you have an eating disorder, you'll always have an eating disorder, I guarantee you that's not the case, because it's so totally curable. But it starts from the thoughts you think and the words that you speak. Rumi once said, the words you speak become the house you live in. And Mum's been through that, I've been through that, and 99% of the women that I know have been through that as well.
There was the first thing when I realised that how serious everything was when I took Megan to the nutritionist in the Gosford Hospital, and Megan came out afterwards. The woman wouldn't see me, but she came out afterwards, and Megan told me that she was told once anorexic, always, and that hit me. I felt that this was the end. I didn't think Megan was going to live.
And just adding on to that, when we hear something from someone else, the very start of my book, I say that my eating disorder started at the age of 6 years old when I heard the words in a playground, "You're not pretty enough to be on our team." I turned somebody else's words into my story. And when we hear words from another, such as "once you've got an eating disorder, always will," I also turn those words into my story. I was like, well, fuck it. I'm going to have this eating disorder. I may as well just sabotage myself. And I did. I really sabotaged from that moment forward. And because I was told a story, it's up to us what we choose to believe. And it's up to each individual, mothers, parents, carers, to choose whether or not they hold on to guilt or blame, or surrender the outcome and just be there and offer them love as much as possible and a space to feel held, but understand that it's never ever the parent's fault.
Amen.
So I hope that helps, guys. Shout out if this resonated, or don't be afraid to tag and share. It just needs to be talked about, that it's not just the person that's going through it, it's a whole reciprocal effect. And remember that we are always being a mirror. So you as the parent or the carer or the loved one, the best thing I believe in, as I said, this is no right or wrong. I don't know what's right or wrong, but I do believe, after going through it and also with the study and research I've done, just also onto the brain, is that when we start to show up for ourselves and we start to put love and compassion back into ourselves as a person and start to lift our own self-worth and look after ourselves, then the people around you will start to see that, and they will actually start to copy that vibration as such. They'll be like, okay, she's putting energy and attention back into herself and showing that she loves herself and cares for herself. Maybe I could do the same. So tune into how you feel about yourself if you're looking to fix or change a situation unfolding in front of you. And actually ask yourself the question, what is the language and the dialogue that I'm talking to myself? How are my thoughts? How are my words? And is that mirroring to my daughter or my son the best that it can? Remember to always watch your language, guys. It's so important. Thanks, Mum.
Thank you.